10, 9.
You want answers? I want the truth!
Get ready for two guys who can't handle the truth.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
But we can. Dave Palumbo, ChrisAceto. RxMuscle.com presents Heavy Muscle Radio. Watch out!
Welcome to another episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined as always by the technician ChrisAceto on this April 16th, 2018 evening. And Chris, busy weekend in the bodybuilding world, multiple shows all over the globe. We'll get to that in a little bit. Maybe the highlight being David Henry kind of redeeming himself in a sense, getting his first victory since 2013.
Really?
In that 212
long?
division. Yeah. He's always been top,
strange,
top of the top, but he's never won a show since then. And he doesn't need. The thing is, people don't realize he doesn't need to qualify for the Olympia because he's a former Olympia champ, so he has an automatic invite every year. That's why he doesn't really compete that much, because he doesn't need to. But this is a good momentum boost for him. He beat a good lineup, and I think that it reestablished him as a guy that's still very dangerous. I mean, you said it yourself. When you saw the pictures of him from behind, he was just sliced and diced like we've never seen him. And the problem is he doesn't seem to be able to duplicate this conditioning over and over. I don't know what that means exactly, but is this the best David Henry we've seen, or just the best David Henry to date? I mean, in the last 5 years, maybe.
I mean, it looks like, to me, it looks like the condition that he had when he won the Chiru, and that was all the way back, I think, in 2012 or something.
Yeah.
He's. I've always said about David Henry, if I was competing, you know what I mean? Like, I always think, like, okay, how do you know when someone's good? You don't say, like, oh, so-and-so was in the 212. No, you go, like, okay, that's how you make it real. Like, what if I was 212 and I was competing? You'd have to stand next to David Henry when he's 100% at his best.
Right.
He's someone to deal with, or actually not being able. You might not be able to deal with him. He's scary. He's got he's got a tremendous level of muscularity when he's at his absolute best.
Speaking of pictures and competing, when we used to compete, someone sent me a picture. People always send me pictures of you. For some reason, I don't know, they find these random pictures and they send them to me because they know that you're very unreachable, evidently, in the bodybuilding world, and I'm very reachable. So they would send them to me, and then I usually forward them to you. And one of the pictures I saw was, I don't know if it was a front double bicep. I'm like, man, Chris would be like perfect for classic physique.
I know it. You
missed your era by about 20 years,
Yeah, well, what's so funny about it too, Dave, is that I mean, I would have been good for classic, but it was just hard for me to put on mass. I would have needed Milos or Amin, our guest host to help me with like the protocol side. But you know what? I know this for a fact, and this is interesting. I know that the biggest and most sexy anabolic cycle in the world would only put like another 7 pounds on me, 10 pounds. You know what I mean? And I needed like way more than that to be a good bodybuilder, really good. You know what I'm saying? Small frame, small appetite.
And
I needed periactin is what I needed.
Periactin. Yeah, the people probably don't even know what that is. Periactin was this antihistamine that for some reason made you voraciously hungry. The problem was that the first week that you took it, you couldn't get out of bed. You basically were homebound for a week. So most people never got through the first week, but if you got through the first week and then you got used to it, then all of a sudden your energy came back and you'd be able to eat. Now, I couldn't get through like one day of it, but I know guys that did, and they said that it was great.
Yeah, no, I always heard people say, oh, I used periactin and I fell asleep for a week.
Yeah, you were literally in a coma for a week from the stuff, but that was what everyone used back in the day.
What did it work? It was another Dan Duchaine, the original. People don't even remember Dan Duchaine, the original steroid guru. He was like the original Boston Lloyd.
Yeah.
Say outlandish things and prescribe outlandish cycles.
Yeah, but he actually had science behind what he was saying. He actually discovered a lot of the stuff that we use today, techniques and drug protocols, come from Dan, that he just experimented on people with.
Do you know he grew up 6 miles from my house?
Yeah, I know, it's weird. There's a lot of people from your area there. Just in that, there was like a hotbed there of bodybuilding talent. Duchesne
6
was there.
miles.
Who else?
6
Wasn't Jeff
miles
King
from my
your area?
house.
Was Jeff King from
No,
your
no.
area?
Jeff went to college in Massachusetts, so that was when I was transplanted down there. But in Maine,
I thought
Dan
he trained
Duchesne,
at some gym that you trained at, didn't he? Because another
yeah,
guy.
Dan Duchesne did. Dan Duchesne,
Dan
and then when I went to
okay.
college, Jeff King did. But
Oh,
Dan
in
Duchesne
college,
used to train.
okay.
He used to come home from L.A. in the summers. So talk about this. Can you imagine this, Dave? This is the smallest of smallest worlds. I trained at the University of Southern Maine in Portland, and in the summertime, this weird guy used to be there, Dan Duchesne, right? Mm-hmm. And I had to be like 15, and he came up to me and I'm dead serious, and he looked at me, and I thought like he's either a killer,
a pedophile, yeah,
or a pedophile, yeah, and he said, "Oh, you would look great." He was like spewing out an anabolic cycle, and honestly, I had no idea what anabolics were.
You were probably now 100% natural, yeah, exactly.
And it scared the shit out of me, is what it did. You know, he said,
you should have listened to him. You probably would have been huge, probably.
So he used to live in L.A., and he would come back to Maine in the summers and just spend the summer like hanging around the beach and going out to the islands and stuff and relaxing.
Yeah, well, he had money back then. He was one of the original steroid dealers too. In addition to being the steroid guru, it's probably not a good idea to be the steroid guru when you're actually the steroid dealer too.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
He did 2 stints in jail. I believe that's where John Romano met him, and that's where their friendship came from. They met in jail.
That's crazy.
When John was in there for whatever fraud thing he was doing, and they became friends. And then they actually, I think when they got out, they were actually roommates for a while. I know that they lived together in L.A. somewhere in the Venice area. And John said that Dan would have bodybuilders coming in and out of there all day long.
Oh yeah.
No one knew what they were doing back then. There were no gurus. He was the only guru. He was the original guru, I guess.
Yeah, no. So it's the strangest thing that I've known him since I was 15, and then when I was 19, can you imagine? Like 4 or 5 years later, I was out in LA in the summertime working at Joe Weider's bodybuilding camp.
He wasn't there, was he?
No, but I would like go to Gold's on like a Sunday afternoon, and I'd run into him then, and he'd be like, with that weird voice. I can't, hey, Chris.
Yeah, he was strange. I didn't really, I only met him once in person. Obviously, I read everything he ever wrote because I was obsessed with knowledge back at that time in the 90s. But I only really met him once, and, we really didn't have a long discussion, and I wish I would have. He was at Bob Bonham would bring him in for seminars at Strong and Shapely gym. And I was there, and I don't know if I missed his seminar, but I saw him, and Bob introduced us, and we were talking, and I was pretty big back then. And it's probably good that we didn't become friends, because I'm sure I would have gotten in a lot more trouble with him. I would have gotten involved with all his crazy, because I would have loved all of his protocols, and I'm sure I would have started, getting stuff from him. It would have been dangerous. I probably would have gone to jail. Sometimes the universe has a way of keeping people away from you who are not good for you.
Yeah.
But he's no longer with us, so God rest his soul, so to speak. And we'll do it. We'll have to do I have to find everyone who ever knew him. We'll have to do some kind of a retrospective show on him. You know who knew him very well? Michael Zampano, who owned Champion.
Oh yeah, they were very close.
Because Michael he was very, very, he is, I should say, a very, very smart guy. And he wrote the book, The Underground Steroid Handbook, with Dan, which was the first real book about steroids. It was pretty rudimentary, but at least it was knowledge there. I think that Bill Phillips did a better job after that on doing his anabolic reference guide, which was kind of followed in the footsteps of Dan's book. But Dan's book was the first. Dan actually printed it, if you remember, on red. Remember, it was on red paper.
Yeah, so you couldn't. No,
so you couldn't photocopy it.
Yeah, so you couldn't photocopy. It was a typical Dan Duchesne weird thing.
Yeah, he probably invented the paper too. That's the funny thing. I guarantee
it was a special paper that the book was in red with black print, so you could only read it and you could never photocopy it.
Right, because he didn't want people stealing it and giving it to he wanted people to have to buy the book, which anyone who's into steroids would have done anyway, because everyone wanted their own copy.
Well, they want to read it over and over and over.
I think I saw it in my bookshelf upstairs. I think I still have it. But when I looked at it, because I had read the Anabolic Reference Guide, that Bill's book was I thought way better. I read it so many times that I had it memorized, and I looked at Dan's. I'm like, oh, it's good, but I had read Bill's already, so it was more informative. It had more information in there. Dan's was kind of It wasn't as science-based as Bill's was. But it told you what to do, and I think that was what the...
Well, that's what people want at the end of the day, what to do.
Exactly. Probably most people would have liked Dan's about it because it was simpler to read. I wanted as much... People don't understand who were listening to the show, that there was no internet. There was no place to find information on this stuff. There was only, very limited things. So when
it was the only book... Yeah. It was the only book available.
Yeah, when Bill's Anabolic Reference Guide came out, that was like... it was like Wikipedia, it was like Encyclopedia, Britannica. It was the Bible, essentially for steroids, And then a couple people came out with their own books after that, but they were all these. They were like
copycats.
Nah, but they weren't even copied. They weren't good. They weren't science based. They were kind of like trying to make things super sensationalized, kind of like the way the bro science is on the internet nowadays. These guys try to make things really, really difficult and really, really, you got to do this and you got to eat this first. And
protocols.
If you followed some of these
timing,
protocols...
what did we talk about to get the timing?
Right.
Precisely the timing. You have to...
If you did some of these protocols that these people do before they go to the gym, pre-workout, after-workout, it's so complicated. It takes the enjoyment out of actually going to the gym. Well, you got to do so many things to prepare before you get there. While you're there, you got to worry about your blood sugar dropping because you're on 4 million IUs of insulin, and then you get a post-work. It's too complicated. Why does it have to be? Nothing needs to be that complicated. Believe me.
You know what? People always talk about
Ronnie Coleman didn't do intra-workout shakes. Okay?
No, I know that. But way back in the day, let's say I'll tell you what back in the day was in the 80s.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Golds did methamphetamine. So that was their pre-workout.
I didn't know that.
I know that because somebody who I know very well, who's back in the day there, who never used anything like that, trained like a maniac and trained long in volume. Someone really famous bodybuilder said, "How can you do the workouts on low calorie without methamphetamines?" And the guy who I know said, he's clueless. I mean, yes, he knows D-ball and Sure. Prevable and back in the day, but so what's methamphetamine? He said speed. He said because I love to train.
Yeah, it kills your appetite. You probably don't want to eat for 6 hours after that.
Yeah,
it's funny. Speaking of people who like to train insanely, John Defendis I saw on Facebook. Actually, Lonnie Teeper announced it, and then I just texted John Defendis. He got his shoulder replaced, same shoulder as mine, left shoulder replaced. And he needs the right one done. So do I. If I keep having children, I'm never going to get it redone. But John, it made me feel good for a second because John's, think about how many sets and crazy amounts of volume this guy did, and I'm like, all right, well, he destroyed his shoulders too. He's human, And
Jay got a new pair of shoes. No, because he's the healthiest, right?
Yeah, but
healthiest post-Olympian.
It's a lot of stuff is genetic. Who the hell knows? Why does one person need a shoulder replacement? The other guy can train to 100 years old and not have anything wrong with their shoulders. Everyone's lifting the same weights. They're eating the same foods. They're taking the same drugs. Genetics. I did a show on DNA. Carmen Tuchenik sells these DNA tests, and I'm going to be selling them on my website. I told you I had my DNA tested.
Yeah,
so we did a show on how to what happens when they test your DNA, and I showed some of my. I talk about full transparency, Chris. How much more transparent can you be when you actually show people your DNA? That's what I did. I actually showed my DNA on there, and you could see what's poor, what's good, what's
Well, I guess if you show them your tax returns, then you're.
Maybe that might be a little more transparent. I do that too. I really don't care. But the point is that your DNA determines everything, and you can see certain genes. I suck in certain genes. I have really good stuff in, and that's why some people can train and not have any injuries. And long term, I'm not talking about like freak accidents. And then other people can't. I have this stupid knee, which has nothing to do with my genetics. I slipped on a staircase, and I fucking still have a torn quad. I've had 4 surgeries on it, and I don't know what to do. And quite frankly, if there's any orthopedic surgeons that have some kind of good ingenuity that can think about how they can keep my quad tendon attached to my kneecap, my patella, without it falling off again, I don't even do anything. It's not tearing. It's wearing away, and it's just not holding. And so, who knows? That's probably because I have poor healing genetics, or I don't know, poor connective tissue. I don't know. You don't know. But the point is that there's genetic variation, and that's why there's great bodybuilders, and that's why. And look at Ronnie. Ronnie's probably the greatest genetics of all time, and the fucking guy has a broken back. They can't fix.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. It is genetics. I mean, genetics plays a huge role with everything, of course. You know, I always say, you know, I have relatives who died of lung cancer, of course, in the 70s, but they smoked since they were 12. You know what? I went to see. Listen, I was a little aside. I took my kids to see my uncle, who I haven't seen in years, and he's 76, and he was telling the story. But he started smoking when he was like 10 or 11. And he said out in front of their school, there used to be people who were peddling cigarettes to other people, you know, advertisers. And they were dressed as doctors with a stethoscope, and they were handing out free cigarettes.
Wow.
This was, let's see, 1936, 46, 1945, yeah.
Was there ever an era where they handed out free steroids? Probably. Do you know that one of my mentors, I've talked about him before, Crazy Dr. Mike, my dermatologist friend, who's no longer with us, he said back in the day, the drug reps, when they would come to his office, used to give Anavar out. They had, you know how they put samples like antibiotic samples, and they give, you know, they got 1 million samples of every new drug that comes out, the stomach stuff and, you know, antacids, and they always drop off samples with the doctors because they want the doctors to prescribe the drugs. Well, they used to do that for Anavar back in the day.
Oh, really?
So my crazy doctor friend would tell the Anavar rep, the Searle rep, look, you don't bring any Anavar to any other doctor. I get all the samples. He goes, I'm going to write so many prescriptions for this. You're going to be the #1 salesman in this area, and he did, because back in the it wasn't a controlled substance. Everyone in the gym had a prescription for Anavar from this guy, and he had all his for free because not only did he get the samples, but then he would fill it on his prescription plan. He'd have people filling it for him. You know, he was obsessed with Anavar, and then of course they stopped making Anavar. You know, he almost had a nervous breakdown. Matter of fact, he told me this story. When they stopped making it, he went to the pharmacy to try to fill it, and they're like, "Oh, Doc, I'm sorry, I can't fill this. It's a controlled substance now." He goes, "What?" He goes, "He didn't know." And so he had to call up all the guys that he wrote prescriptions for, and he's like, "Look, you got to give me a bottle of your, you know, I want a bottle, you know."
He needs his lifetime stash on the side.
Exactly. And back then, Anavar was 2.5 milligrams a pill. So
yeah, those little footballs. They were footballs, right?
Yeah, but you had to take you had to take 10 of them probably, you know, to get as a male at least, you know, to get an effect from it. Women would take 1 or 2, but nowadays women take 20 milligrams, if not more. You know, that's unheard of. That's what guys used back in the day. But that just goes to show you, you know.
You know what was funny? I can say this on the air. I hope so, but I'm gonna anyway. Samir, I was talking to Samir the other day, 2 days ago.
Samir Banut?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave, you got to get him on, because I always said this. I knew him very, very well. Ask him what he took for cycles, and it's just insanely little.
Primo Winchell Anavar probably, right?
Yeah, but the dose, Dave, the dose is ridiculous.
It's like 200 milligrams of this.
Yeah. When he won the Olympia on, it was like, I mean, he told me it was 2 nights ago. He'll tell you. He'll have you on the show, and he said, I'll go on the show, and just people will get mad at me because they'll think I'm just trying to mislead them and lie.
Well, you know what it is? These guys train so hard naturally, and they maximized everything naturally so much that when they just kicked a little bit of anabolics in, it just made everything work better. They weren't that big. People don't remember. Samir, what was Samir? You think he was 200 pounds on stage?
No, he was not. Absolutely was not. No.
No, so he won the Olympia under 200 pounds. And,
he definitely was under 200. He was 193 or 190. I guessed his weight once. He almost had a heart attack.
He just had a beautiful physique, and it just was enhanced enough with the anabolics to really give him fullness and roundness, and that was it. And that's what these guys did. Off season, they probably did a couple of Dianabols a day with, you know, maybe a shot of test. I don't even know if they used test back in the day. They probably used Deca, you know, Deca and D-Bol. No one knew anything about drugs. They would use whatever they got. It would just be sitting in. Someone would say, here. It was like giving someone like a turkey sandwich. Oh, you want some of these? I got extra. I don't know. No one even thought to use a lot of this stuff. You know what I mean? You could have 20 bottles of Dianabol. No one would use a lot of it. They would be like, give it to someone else. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. It's like giving away, like, you know, a bottle of creatine nowadays. Hey, you need creatine? No one even thought it was giving anyone else an edge, you know. They're just like, here, take it, you know. How many you take of these? You take 2 Dianabol a day. All right, Sean. No one thought to say, hey, maybe I'll take 10 because that guy's doing 2. I'll get more out of it.
Yeah, they'd follow the directions rather than, like, Yeah.
Who was the first person you think to actually start saying maybe more is bad? I think it was probably Dan. Probably Dan Duchesne was the first guy to say, I don't think these guys are doing enough. You know.
I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. I don't know who the first person I ran into I thought was like, this guy's nuts.
Yeah. That's what I want to know. Probably Mahalik. You know.
Yeah, 1,000 MIGs.
Yeah. Where did Bob base his Bob Crushkin base his cycle recommendations on?
No idea.
He probably just experimented on people.
Oh, he's a guesser. He's a guesser. He don't know.
Yeah, he's like, you're a guesser, right?
Yeah.
He's a guesser. That's your new nickname, Chris the Guesser Aceto.
Yeah, the guesser.
Unbelievable. All right, let's just talk. I was going to start going into my. I had some studies to talk about, but let's talk about the shows that were this past weekend. Let's start with the Muscle Contest Ireland, which is John Lindsay's show that they held in Limerick, Ireland. And isn't it ironic that they actually have a town called Limerick, Ireland?
Yeah, it is.
I think that's pretty funny.
It's funny.
Well, I think that the show is important because it does reestablish David Henry as a guy who's a very dangerous guy in this 212 division when he's at his best. Because here he was at his best. He was in peaked out condition, and he beat a really tough line. He beat Sami Al Haddad, who's been second, the last 3 weeks in the last 3 shows, essentially.
Yeah, and a very good
Sami Al Haddad. Yeah.
Yeah.
He beat. You have to say, with the way things were going for David Henry, he kind of pulled a Dexter in a sense because this guy's not young. He might be in his late 40s at this point. But David Henry was one of these guys that people are starting to write off because maybe he's getting a little older and he's not looking. And he comes back looking amazing, and steals this show from a good lineup.
Yeah, no, I thought he looked. I thought he looked stupendous.
Sami has to settle for second. I mean, Ahmad Ahmad third, who looked also awesome.
I mean, it was a great lineup. So, it's a great lineup, and you're beating, good guys who. I mean, just a good lineup. So
look at it this way: Sammy Trudy, who looked like a world beater the last couple of shows out there, he was placing. I thought he could have won a couple of those shows. He placed 8th here. That tells you how good this lineup was.
Yeah, well, he placed 8th. That tells you how good the lineup is. He placed 8th. That tells you, as well, gives you some insight on the fact that it's just really hard to do multiple shows.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Your body just falls
all over the world too. Not to mention. So, like I said, I thought Ahmad Ahmad looked really good. He's not a young guy either. He's been competing for quite a while. When he's on, he's on. He's probably got the best abs in bodybuilding. Wouldn't you say?
Some of the best. He's got some of the best squared shoulders and feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
good front,
he's got tremendous,
relaxed position.
Great stance. Only real weakness is hamstring depth from behind.
His legs are not that good.
They're good enough. You know what I mean? They're good enough. I mean, Henry's aren't like deal breakers either.
No, and I think that's why neither are Sami Al Haddad's. I think that's why Henry really dominated this lineup because there wasn't anyone with world beater legs. Although Sammy Trudy, when he's in shape, has really good legs.
Yeah, he has very big legs.
Vorshek Korotensky from the Czech Republic, another really, really up and coming good guy, 4th place here, and Kim Jong Ho from Korea in 5th. So stacked lineup. I mean, really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. First of all, it was impressive that they got such a good lineup here, But I'm surprised we didn't see someone like what's his name, Hadi Chupin, doing a show like this because this is a show he probably could have gone to.
Yeah, he would have been able to get in, right?
Yeah.
He would have been able to, get the visa to go. It's strange, right?
Yeah.
It would have been a good show for him.
Did you know that Ahmad Ahmad is from Iraq? I didn't know that.
Ahmad, yeah, he's Iraqi living in, but he's lived in Sweden for years.
Oh, okay. Now you helped. Now what happened to Masoom Butt? Who you helped? Who's now I notice every time Masoom competes, he
came in after Trudy.
He gets citizenship from a different country. Now he's Northern Ireland. He's from I don't know how this guy.
He's floating around. Yeah, he's floating around from.
Obviously, he's got the problem with the Pakistani passport too. He can't get into the U.S. What happened to him here? Because here's a guy who I thought would be pretty dangerous in this lineup.
I thought he's a light boned, meaning not a big guy.
Mm-hmm. Too small.
Too small of a guy. Compared to like the frame of Ahmad Ahmad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, he's got a. It's weird, you know.
He was
if
shredded.
you look, he's shredded, and he's got enough. He's got plenty of muscle on that frame, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's standing next to other people.
I was surprised. I thought we were going to see him place a little higher, but you know what? Like I said, you know, he hasn't competed in quite a while. When was the last show he did?
Oh gosh, quite a while ago. Years, 3, 4 years, 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 maybe now.
Yeah, and is that all because he had stuff going on, or is it because he
no,
couldn't
he
get
had
in the US,
no, he had like a autoimmune disease that was like making him like really, really weak, and
oh really? That's weird.
Just it like went away. Like he couldn't train, couldn't exercise, couldn't do anything.
Maybe he prayed it away like Lionel Baiki got rid of his diabetes.
Oh, it just went away on him. You know.
Yeah, these things happen like that. I've been praying every day that my knee gets better, so I don't have to get another surgery. But so far,
well, I think he used up all your I think he used up all your prayers on your shoulder.
Prayers didn't work on my shoulder, that's for sure. Although they did, I guess they did. You know, I guess if you pray enough that for relief, pain relief, and for functionality, and then you get a shoulder replacement and you get that back, I guess in essence, my prayers were answered in that sense. Like, you know, it could have been a terrible replacement. I could have had bad things happen. So I'll take it. Believe me, I'll accept it. The terrible thing is that, you know, when you have young kids, as you know, there's no time to get surgeries anymore. I can't get. I don't have a minute to myself. I can't desert, you know, my wife at this point and go tie myself up for 8 weeks in a with my legs straight on crutches.
Yeah,
it's impossible, you know. It's like, it's crazy. I need to clone myself so that my clone can take over for me while I'm recovering. Oh my God. Well, you know, John Lindsay also held another muscle contest competition in LA, the LA Grand Prix men's physique pro, and Felipe Franco from Brazil won that. Now, the interesting story here, Chris, is that Joseph Lee comes in second here, by the way. Joseph Lee was like second behind Brandon Hendrickson like 2 weeks in a row, and then beat Brandon Hendrickson, I think it was last week at the Salt Lake City show. And everyone's touting this guy now as like, you know, this guy's very, very dangerous. And then he comes into this show, the prohibitive favorite, you know, nonetheless. And Felipe Franco from Brazil comes in and beats him. So I had Andre Ferguson on the show, who's, you know, we all love his physique. He was second. He won the Arnold, and, you know, he was second at the Olympia last year. He'll probably win the Olympia this year. And, you know, we were talking about this. This men's physique division is probably the most competitive division of all the men's divisions out there. You know, it's a shame these guys don't hit any poses, but these guys they talk crap about each other, they trash talk each other, and the physiques get better and better and better. It's amazing. I like I said, I really wish they would give them at least one pose to do, just so you and I can critique it. You know what I mean? It's hard to critique a standing relaxed position. You know,
you're right. There's a lot of killer physiques.
Unbelievable. I'm really impressed that this Felipe Franco looked great. Beat Joseph Lee, and Anthony Woods settles for third here. So it's been a big couple weeks in a row between everyone's been trading back and forth, you know, who's beating who, which I like. Usually in bodybuilding, you don't get that. It's pretty consistent. One person wins, and that's it. Now, Ed and Betty Pariso also had their Orlando Europa show this past weekend. They had the amateur and the pro event, and in the pro event they had women's physique, which was won by Prenprahai Taganak from Thailand. Now, I've interviewed her before, and she's got a really good physique. I believe she turned pro in bodybuilding, and then she switched to physique. She's really, really good. I think she might be the only Thailand person, a woman from Thailand I've ever seen who has muscle. You know, usually they're not. They don't have women like that there. But she's impressive. She'll be going to the Olympia probably. And congratulations to her, Valentina Mashina from Russia, who I got to tell you, I tried to talk her into doing bodybuilding, this girl. Someone sent me pictures of her. I have a friend of mine who trains her, who's helping her out in the U.S. here. And this girl's got a lot of muscle on her. And they had to suck her down a little bit. But I said, look, you could do this Wings of Strength show probably and make money for yourself. If you don't win, you could probably place top 3, I said. I mean, she's that good. So she comes in second here, and Lauren Rattan from South Carolina comes in third. So congratulations to those ladies. They had a men's physique here also in Orlando, which was won by Diogo Montenegro from Brazil. So 2 Brazilians winning on both coasts, one in Orlando, one in L.A. Gerardo Gabriel from Orlando comes in second, hometown boy, and Greg Brandt finished in third. So this men's physique lineup, as I stated, Chris, is just out of control. They have shows everywhere. That's why they have so many shows for the men's physique and bikini that winning a show doesn't guarantee you go to the Olympia anymore, Chris. It's a point system now.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we talked about that at the end of last year. I kind of almost forgot about it too. But if there's over a certain amount of shows in the pro division, then winning a show doesn't guarantee you go to the Olympia. You have to have the most points. Now, obviously, winning a show gives you a lot of points, so it's hard not to win a show and go to the Olympia, but what it's doing is it's making these guys have to do more than one show to kind of cinch up the fact that they're going to qualify for the Olympia. There was Pro Figure in Orlando as well, won by Felicia Livesey from North Carolina. So she's a new name. She'll be going to her first Olympia. Finishing in second, Stacy Fujowski, and in third, Taryn Garlington. So that, relatively unknown. So it's good to see some new talent come up. That's Ed and Betty's show. The amateur show was really good. Leo Oliveira was just one of my clients, won the light heavyweight class, and he lost to a real freak in the overall. But it's good to see. Because, I've been seeing a lot of shows, Chris, on the regional level that have been very, very small. They've been having very few competitors. We talked about this last week or about 2 weeks ago, how this classic physique seems to be ruling the day. A lot more people are entering classic than bodybuilding. But the talent is still there in bodybuilding. I still think, Chris, I think a lot of these classic guys are going to move up to bodybuilding eventually. I think they're just starting out in classic because it's easier. Let's face it, you don't have to be as big.
Well, but what is the point in moving if the class is growing? I mean, if there's,
because people gain weight, they can't fit into the class anymore, don't you think?
Oh, okay, they can't fit in. Well, they can always do what they've been doing, is up the weight class. Yeah,
but that's a mistake. But you know what? Think about it. Classic is bodybuilding, right? I mean, the goal of every bodybuilder out there, I think, and Jose, I know Jose's listening to the show, he would be applauding me and patting me on the back, and he's the one who actually said it first on our show. Every bodybuilder wants to be huge, You can say you want to be a classic guy and you want to be shapely and all this, but bullshit, everyone wants to put as much muscle on as they possibly can. That's the goal.
Absolutely.
When you go to the gym. So a lot of these classic guys are really young. So, in 2, 3, 4 years, they're not going to fit into they're not going to want to stop growing. They're going to want to keep growing, and they're going to have to move into the open category. So they may turn pro in classic, but you'll see a lot of these classic guys go up to the open. Justin was sending me pictures of, my friend Justin Miller was sending me pictures of, Steve Lorius?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I couldn't beat this guy, at my best, and I would have outweighed him probably by 50 pounds. But that's how good this guy can do the open class. And Justin said the same thing. I mean, and be very dominant. I mean, I'm sure he'll do well in classic, but really, I mean, he can grow beyond the classic class and still kill it in open bodybuilding if he wanted to. Chris Bumstead could do the same thing if he wanted to.
Well, Chris Bumstead won the North America, don't forget.
True, in bodybuilding, right.
Well, he won that, which just means he beat super heavy. So he was the super heavy winner.
He was the super. He's a tall guy.
Maybe he was a heavy winner.
He's a tall guy too, so that's why he's probably was heavy enough. But it just goes to show you. I mean, you're going to see crossover, which is I guess good. I guess it's good. If I was a classic guy and I knew I could move into the open and be competitive, I would want to do that because I would want to show off my striated glutes and my hamstrings up to my butt cheeks, and and all the detail you kind of lose out on the wearing the classic physique shorts.
Yeah.
There was another. Oh my God! There was 3 men's physiques pro shows in the same weekend. There's one in Texas too. The City Limits Pro Physique, won by Antoine Weatherspoon.
What's the prize money there?
Who knows? Probably $5,000. George.
No,
probably $3 grand. Probably $3 grand.
Come on, $3 grand or 300.
No, I think the minimum prize money is like $5 or $6 grand for the total amount.
Oh, for a show you need to give away $5 grand.
I think they have to. So they probably break it down like 3, 2, 1 or something like that. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my butt right now. That's decent if you're getting free. I guess. If there's a million shows and you can do all kinds of shows. Right, pays for your flight. George Brown finishes second. Akeem Scott third. So congratulations to those guys. Can you believe they got Masters men's physique? Oh my God, on the pro level. Antoine Williams won that too. Interesting. Well, congratulations to all the big winners this past weekend. I love to see competitions out there. It means we're in the heart of the season. We're getting a lot of Olympia qualifications. Can you believe pretty soon we'll be talking about the Olympia? I can't even believe it. But we have a lot of big shows still coming up. We got Junior USA and Junior Nationals, USA, Masters Nationals, Team U. It's good, North American. But so we're like I said, we're in the heart of the contest season. It's just starting. People, and I know this because you know what? I remember starting people's diets. All my clients that I have, and I'm sure you got the same thing. And now we're getting down to like 6 weeks out, 5 weeks out. I'm like, holy crap, we just started. Where did the time go? How the heck did we get into this already? How did we get so deep into the year? We're in April already. It's nuts.
Well, you blink and it's June. And, I break the year into 2 segments: January, and then halfway through June. Just like my life, I break it up in segments, 6s. The beginning of the start of the new year. Then before you blink, it's June. So I have to accomplish mentally X, Y, Z by June. And then the second half of the year, which is July 1st through December 31st. And here we are moving up towards, before you blink, it's going to be June.
It's unbelievable how fast it's going. Now that I'm breeding snakes, the pythons lay eggs. What they do is they shed. You put the males and females together. Once they shed, usually it's 30 days, and they lay eggs. So I got 2 so far. I've gotten 2 clutches of eggs so far, and I'm still waiting for them. The other, so you get the eggs, and then the eggs take 60 days around to hatch. So you put them in the incubator. And 60 days sounds like a million. It sounds like a year. When you first take the eggs out, like, oh, now I gotta wait a year for these things to hatch. But it's crazy how fast the time goes. It's like, oh my God, they're gonna hatch soon. I'm gonna have too many babies. I don't know where I'm gonna put them all. So that's how fast time goes. And when you're a kid in school, the school year feels like it takes 10 years to get through one school year, right? It's like
a day. You kidding? In elementary school, I can remember like, oh my God, are we in period 2?
Right.
Trauma.
So that's just, I guess that just shows that we're getting old. That's all it means, but it is what it is. I wanted to talk about...
we can talk about... I was in a junk store today.
When you say junk store, is that like a
yeah, just
thrift
like
shop?
a...
Thrift shop?
Well, it's a junk store. They sell like let's say Dave's Furniture Store in Manhattan has a fire and they got smoke damage to the furniture. They send it out to the store. And
I like those kind of stores.
Yeah.
Good deal. My dad shopped at those his whole life. That was all he ever bought stuff from.
And it's like that combined with the dollar store. This guy looks at me and he says, "You looking for bed bug remedies?" So I thought it was the exterminator, professional exterminator. Once I was in the...
You get recognized everywhere, Chris.
Yeah, I was in the exterminating aisle once at like Home Depot, and there was a guy there, and it turned out to be the exterminator. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What is a Home Depot?" I'm like, "Who?" I'm trying to place the face, and I realized, oh, it's my exterminator. So when I was in this junk store, the guy said, "You're looking for bed bug remedies." I thought, okay, I'm staring like at the guy, like wide-eyed, trying to figure out where I know him from. Like,
you're like me, you don't know.
Assistant? Is he the assistant too? Did I meet him once and I wasn't paying enough attention? And he goes, "I hate the show."
Oh my God, that's so funny.
He listens to the radio show, and he, instead of saying like, what you think of the Ireland Pro or something, he thought he'd make it more personal.
So that he watches the show, about the bed bugs. That's funny. And you're getting like paranoid. You're like, uh-oh, who is this?
Yeah.
Who knows about my bed bug situation? Because probably the only time you ever talk about bed bugs is on the TV show, I'm sure. On the radio show, rather.
That and with the code people. That's the only time.
Yeah, the code people. It's funny because I run into my mailman all over the place. Literally at least 3 times a week, and I never recognize him. The mailman, Chris, delivers the mail into my building. He comes up into the building and he hands me the mail every day, and I'll run into him in Lowe's or Home Depot, and I won't even recognize him. I'll be like, "Hey, it's George." I'm like, "George who?" I'm thinking to myself, and then I realized it's the mailman. So I thought that's pretty funny. Today, you know what I had to get done? So we have this. You know what happens? You buy a house. I bought a house. It was 12 years old, which is pretty young for as far as houses go.
Yeah, it's a new house. Definitely
but of course, I had to replace 2 air. The people moved out just in time for everything to go wrong.
Oh yeah, everything to break. Yeah.
2 AC units I already put in, And
what happened? The old ones broke?
Yeah, they weren't cooling the house anymore. But because they only have a limited lifespan. So I put in new whatever. This is when we first moved in. So I knew I have a water system here. So we have well water here. And then we have an RO system. It's a pretty sophisticated system. It filters the water, and then it adds minerals back to it, and we have very good drinking water from the faucet. So I knew this water thing was not going to last. It was at this point where there's one little thing you have to go out there and kick it every once in a while to kick on the water filter.
How do you know when to kick it?
Well, because what happens is you turn on you're in the shower, and all of a sudden you have no water left, and you're like, what the fuck? It's always when I'm in the shower with soap all over me. What the fuck? I feel like my dad. You talk about you becoming your dad, eating like your dad. Sure. I'm like, fucking, what's going on? I'm using every colloquialism my dad uses. Cursing under my breath. My dad's famous curse was fungu. He was
Oh yeah, but that was Italian. I used to say that word all the time when I was little. I didn't know what it meant.
I think he did it so that he wouldn't be cursing in front of me, because he would, he didn't want to say the F word in front of us kids, so he would say fungo, and
That's so funny. My parents would say that, and one day I said it, and they went nuts. That is so crazy, Dave. That they. So
every once in a while we run out of water because we have a big 500-gallon tank. So you don't know that the thing is not making any new water because it takes a couple days to exhaust down the tank. And so I'm like, my wife and I, so we come home the other day, and the thing is clicking on and off and on and off and on. I'm like, what? My wife's like, let's just get a new water system already. We're putting off the inevitable. I said, you're right. You know what? You're right. So I got this new water system. It took them the whole day to put it in today. This thing is so amazing. I have the best water anywhere in the world, probably. This thing is an RO system. It desulfurizes the water. It even bubbles ozone into the water, which is obviously a disinfectant, but also it oxygenates the water. So I have alkalinized, oxygenated, filtered water that's throughout my whole house. I shower in it. Everything that comes into my house is like that. And this thing is, we have an extra pump on it.
Oh, you showed it to me. You pointed it out to me. Remember?
But it's a new system. It's a new one.
Maybe okay.
You saw the old system. This is the new system.
This is the improved.
First of all, and it's half the size of the old one, because obviously everything gets better. As that was a 15-year-old unit they had on there. So I'm so happy with my water in my house now. And my wife's like, we're buying bottled water. I said, we have better water than the bottled water. We could make our own bottled water here. I'm trying to explain to her. I said, you got to drink the house water is better. So finally, the guy who came and put the new filter system in, he told her, he's like, yeah, you got much better water than the bottled water. So I'm thinking about maybe we should come out with RxMuscle water now. I can bottle it right here. The shipping might be a problem though. It's very heavy to ship water. How do these water companies do it? How do they make money with all the shipping expenses? Shipping's got to cost way more than the water costs.
Poland Spring is right up the street from me, literally.
I didn't know that. Yeah, they have the best routes around. Maybe I can drum up a deal with Poland Spring. I'll just make my own water, and we'll call it like iron water or something like that. We got to make it like some kind of a bodybuilder friendly name to it, so we can make some money on it.
Speaking of natural
muscle water, we'll call it. Like Muscle Milk. Water. Muscle Milk made a lot of money for that company, and it's a horrible product.
Yeah, it is a horrible product.
It's probably the worst. I don't even think it tastes good. I know people would think it tastes delicious. I think it tastes terrible, to be honest with you.
It has a weird taste to it. It has like
an aftertaste, right?
Yeah.
And that company got sold. I forget who bought Muscle Milk, but
someone Brazilian, Nestle, or
yeah, they made a lot of money. Those owners of that company, a ton of money. It's good. I like to hear good. I like to hear stories like that. It gives me hope that it's.
I went out to my cousin's farm. I think I told you that because my 4-year-old asked, "Will there be a lion there?" I said, "We're not going to a zoo. Going to a farm." And my cousin is raising grass-fed beef.
Oh wow! I like that. Very nice.
Yeah, and I said, and he's been at L Bean for like 25 years, 30 years in advertising, and they were just making big. Going through layoffs recently, so he thought he was going to be laid off, and he was contemplating, going from 8 to 10 cows to lots of cows. Right. And I said, bodybuilders would buy it.
A lot, no, but the Whole Foods, that's all they sell now is grass-fed beef. There's a huge market for it right now, and it's very healthy. And you can sell also the dairy products of these grass-fed beef too, because now I buy grass-fed butter now. I use butter, and I've incorporated because I felt that I was eating too many polyunsaturated fats, so I felt I needed some saturated fats in my diet, a little bit more than just a couple egg yolks I eat every day. So I started incorporating grass-fed butter into my regimen, which I think tastes delicious, and it's got omega-3 fats in it. So you can do that as well. Obviously, I think that they make grass-fed cheeses too, I would assume, coming from the cows that also eat only the grass. So
there's a market for everything. There's a big.
I wanted to get after you told me about you showed me that picture of you and your son feeding the giraffe the leaves.
Oh yeah.
I was asking my wife. I said, "Can we get a giraffe in the backyard? I wonder if there's anything. We're zoned agricultural here. I wonder if there's any. It's kind of just like having a dinosaur in your backyard. I wonder if there's anything to like prevent this from getting. The problem is, I think you gotta have a place for the giraffe to come in if it's like raining or something like that. I don't know. I'd have to build a pretty high building for that. They probably limit how high I can build. How tall do those giraffes get? Do you know?
They must. Well, we were probably, I don't know. That was, God, we had to be 30 feet up, 25 feet up.
I think that would be cool to have a giraffe in your backyard. Who fucked the cows? I want a giraffe. They're like a big cow anyway. They eat leaves. They're vegetarians. As long as you don't get stepped on by one of those things, you're probably fine. See, elephants would be too dangerous because elephants could like charge your house and crush you, break your house. But giraffes are kind of just like they just want to eat all day long. They eat the leaves all day. I don't know if I have enough leafy trees in my backyard though. Maybe I can get the whole community, the Northwoods community, we can have like a giraffe that can just kind of wander through all the different properties. We'll have them be like the community giraffe or something like that. That might be cool. All right, let me. I wanted to talk about this one study that just came out. They did a study, Chris, where they showed that breast cancer survival rates had a direct correlation to the amount of muscle mass a woman had.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting to see that they found that the 5-year survival rates were much higher in women who had more lean muscle tissue, which is, I guess, makes sense because cancer, obviously eats up a lot of muscle, because it's very degenerative, and if you don't have a lot of muscle to begin with, you could become weak and frail, and obviously your immune system will fall apart a lot faster. Now, let me give you the statistics here. They observed 3,241 women from the Kaiser Permanente of Northern California and Dana-Farber Cancer Institutes between January 2000 and December 2013. So this was a 13-year retrospective study they did. The patients were diagnosed with stage 2 or 3 breast cancer. First, the researchers studied the CT scans from the time of the diagnosis to determine the levels of muscle and fat in the bodies of the patients. They found that 34% of the patients were having sarcopenia on the first CT. Now, sarcopenia means a loss of muscle mass. According to the results, muscle characteristics appear to be important predictors of survival for those who have breast cancer. Patients who had sarcopenia were 41% less likely to have survived than those who did not. That means being in a severe state of muscle breakdown. Patients with the highest amount of adipose tissue, in other words, body fat, were also linked to an increased mortality risk. Patients who had both sarcopenia and high amounts of body fat were 89% more likely to have died. So if you're a fat, skinny person, if you're a fat, non-muscular person, your chances with cancer are very, very high that you're not going to make it. I thought that's a pretty, it's a pretty significant statistic right there, which would lead you to believe that they would, people with cancer, especially women, probably make sense to put them on some kind of a mild anabolic steroid, wouldn't it? Like an Anavar or something like that.
I would just say it goes back to the opening little talk about Anavar 2 milligrams in the.
I mean, doesn't that make sense? If you know now that this study proves that muscle mass is important to survival in cancer, then you'd want to get people in the gym working out and putting them on something that's going to help them become more anabolic and not lose as much muscle, because obviously sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass, is also a predictor of death, from cancer. So I thought it's an interesting study, and I think that I've seen several bodybuilding women who've had breast cancer, and I shouldn't say every single one, a lot of them beat it, and I think that that's the reason why. One person who comes to mind who didn't, which is a very, very sad story, is, I don't know if you know, did you remember the bodybuilder Mariana Kumlos?
No.
She was from Canada, beautiful girl, gorgeous, one of the best looking female bodybuilders I think I've ever seen, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer, super nice person too, and I became friends with her. And she didn't beat it. She beat it first, and then it came back, and it was a terrible, terrible story. She actually, about 6 or 8 months before she died, she actually had come out with the guy she was dating, this guy Paul, and they spent New Year's Eve with us. I forget what year it was. It was probably 2003 or 4, something like that. Probably 2002 or 3. And and then it was really sad that she looked pretty good when she came out too, but she didn't make it. But most women that I know who do have breast cancer as bodybuilders, they have better rates of beating this stuff. And I really believe, obviously now we know why, because muscle mass is important, low body fat is important. Being in shape is important. Knowing how to eat, I think healthy eating goes along with having muscle too, Chris, which also is probably one of the reasons why people who work out tend to do better. So anyway, I like to fill you guys in on these interesting studies. I don't know if anyone saw there was a great FIBO was this past weekend as well. Up in Germany. I know Lee Priest was there, and Lee Romano and I had done a funny video on Iron Rage this past week about foods that cause farting. For some reason, people love to talk about farts. It just seems to me. And I was asking John and Lee who was like who were the best or the worst farters, on the pro scene back in their day, because John was involved with a lot of the women because he was dating Shelley Beatty, and Lee Priest said that Sonny Schmidt was a notorious farter, and that if you would stand next to him on stage, like in the lineups, he would fart like and he would like almost like you couldn't breathe. It was so bad. You had to hold your breath. Which I thought was funny because I don't really know that much about Sonny Schmidt other than he was a good bodybuilder and he was a good friend of Tony Doherty. But he was a notorious farter. I don't know if you were aware of that statistic.
No, I didn't know, and I never met Sonny Schmidt. But Milos has met. They were buddies, so Milos would be able to fill you in on that.
Maybe it was the insulin. No. But how many times were you backstage at the USA or the Nationals and just someone just was the worst? I mean, everyone had a little gas, but some people there were guys with just terrible gas, and sometimes the women had worse gas than the guys did.
Well, I blame the invention of whey protein for that.
You probably know this answer because you're obviously married to Laura Craval back in the day. Wasn't there an Olympia where one of the girls farted on stage and it was like the inside joke in all the magazines?
Oh yeah.
Who was it?
I don't know who that was.
Was it Tanya Knight? She'll probably get mad at me.
No.
No, it wasn't. Who? Someone farted. I know that on the stage, and it was a huge story. I don't know.
It would have been 2 years. We forgot.
I don't know, but I'm sure one of my listeners will remind me. It's probably on the internet. I'm sure if we Googled it, who farted at the so and so Olympia, come up. But it happens. When you're stuffing tons of protein down and you're dehydrating yourself and eating lots of carbs at the end of the prep, you get gas. It just happens. No one talks about this, but I'll talk about it. The greatest feeling, Chris, and I mean, you can confirm or deny this, is it usually takes about a day or two after the show's over. It's very hard to move your bowels. It's hard to go to the bathroom because you're
Everyone
so
gets
constipated.
wound up at the end.
Yeah,
and that's like the number one like complaint, and people always ask me, I'm like, you just gotta.
I have the answer.
Nothing you can do.
It's Fiberlize. You got to do Fiberlize.
Yeah, but what are you gonna be doing? 19 pounds of Fiberlize the last 3 days before show?
I have guys do it 3 times a day the day before, and that will help them go. But it doesn't help you go completely. But then what happens is after the show, you eat like a lunatic, and for a day after that, you can't go to the bathroom again. And that first poop, you go like after the show, like the next day or the day after. It's the greatest feeling of all time. It's the only thing that you finally feel normal again after you go that first poop. It's the greatest. And everyone out there I know who competes is probably laughing their asses off because they know what I'm talking about. Chris, you probably don't ever go to the bathroom anyway because you hardly eat anything. But I'm telling you, that first poop after a show is the best of all time. It hurts like hell. It feels like there's like you're pushing a boulder through your butt cheeks. But once you get that first little poop out and the rest of it comes out, it's like woof. Thank God. I think more people, rip open their butthole from that first poop after the show than anything else, and no one talks about these things. Once I invented fiber. Now remember, when I was competing, there was no Fiberlize. I was using like Metamucil or whatever, but toward the end of my career, I would triple up on those on the fiber dosages because it softens everything up and it prevents that pain. I'm telling you, it's a very real phenomenon. All right, what else?
You got to come up with Fiberlize hers.
The women use the Fiberlize too. You don't need hers.
I know, but you got to have a. I know, but you got to have a nifty little.
Oh, you mean just for women who are constipated who don't even work out?
Fiberlize hers.
Oh, so I can make a pink color. Or
no, like a different label or.
There you go. I'll give Chris all the credit for it if it sells. Now, every time I want to create a new product, my wife screams at me. You're just wasting money, and she's usually right. That's the funny thing. So I want to get back to this. So Lee Priest was at FIBO, and he was training at the gym one day, and Flex Lewis was there, and so they worked out together, and it was great. I don't know if Flex was lying, but Flex said that Lee's making a comeback. This is his first day on this comeback trail. So, because everyone's always asking who would win, Lee Priest or Flex Lewis at their best, and what would be your answer to that, Chris?
Best?
Yeah, could Lee beat Flex Lewis at his best?
Yeah, he could beat Flex Lewis at his best.
Why? Because he was bigger?
Because he stood in the '98 Olympia and deserved top 6. And that was the toughest Olympia of all time.
True.
That Olympia was. Think of that lineup. That was Coleman at his all-time best.
Yeah.
Wheeler looked stupendous. Nasser probably Nasser was at his all-time best.
Yeah, he was definitely.
Fourth place, Cormier was 6. He was really, really good.
Was Sean Ray 4th or Levrone?
Sean Ray was right in there. He looked not his all-time best, but close.
Well, I think Levrone was 5th, right?
Levrone, not at his all-time best, but a tremendous look. And Lee Priest right up there in the mix in the top 6. And the Mind looked tremendous, and the Mind was probably like outside the top 10. Yeah, although he got a lot of comparisons. Right. The Mind will tell you that he did get a lot of comparisons. For that show.
He was up there for 400 comparisons, right?
Yeah.
It is funny though, because when we did that iron debate about are there enough call-outs in bodybuilding, which is a good show if people haven't watched it, with Milos, and Milos made an interesting point. Back in the 90s when they would do usually the first 3 guys, everyone knew who they were. They did more call-outs with the 3rd through 7th place guys, and so Milos was always in that stretch. So he'd be out there for
Milos. They never know. You know why they didn't know what to do with Milos in all the shows?
Why?
Because and I'd like to hear his input on it. Because Milos didn't have the guns.
Right. He didn't have the arms. Yeah, you're right.
But he had a very good looking front double bicep, but he didn't have the crazy arms, and he had a good side tricep because he turned it into like a pec and ab shot, and he knew how to throw his quads in there, but he didn't have the triceps.
He probably would be winning shows today if he was competing today, with that look.
Oh yeah, of course he would. So they didn't know what to do with him, he would get more comparisons than anyone else, And remember that back in that era, they had a unique symmetry round,
right?
Which was they would make you quarter turn, and they would quarter turn you. They would quarter turn you for, I mean, a Wheeler, a Sean Ray, a Levrone, a Dillette, a Lee Priest would get called out maybe 6 or 7 times in comparisons just on doing the quarter turns before we even get to the muscularity round.
Right. To give you an idea of how good the '98 Olympia was, Paul Dillette didn't even make the top 10. Ronnie was 1st, Wheeler 2nd, Nasser 3rd, Levrone 4th, Sean Ray 5th, Cormier 6th, Lee Priest, like you said, 7th, Ernie Taylor, remember him, with the arms, 8th, Matarazzo 9th, and Jean-Pierre Fuchs 10th.
And why do you think that was actually the best lineup? Because I have my own little.
Well, everyone in that lineup were all like mass monsters, pretty much. I mean, aside from Sean and
why was LeBron at his best?
Oh, they were all at their best because Dorian retired. And so everyone saw there was an open. There was an open slot. I knew you get that right. Yeah, there was an open slot.
Dorian was out, and everyone was like, Nasser was like, okay, I'm winning it this year. Right. Sean Ray was like, okay, the whole apples and orange things that he would like talk about ad nauseum. Say, the mass monster's out, I'll step in. Wheeler, who was always afraid of Dorian, figured I can win. LeBron, I can win. And then Coleman, it was just Coleman. He probably just was like, he just happy to be there and wanted to look good.
I agree.
And that was the problem is after that, you know what the funny thing is, Dave? After that show, everyone was like psyched out for life from Coleman.
Yeah.
And who's the only person who thought he could beat Coleman?
Probably Sean Ray.
No.
Jay.
I
know. I'm just kidding. Sean Ray thought he could beat everyone, But
yeah. No, I think he figured he couldn't beat Coleman after that show.
I think everyone. Coleman was very dominant in 98, 99. After that, people were starting to pick his physique apart. Oh, this is not good, and this is not good, and that's not good. And but he was still winning with straight unanimous firsts. I got to give Jay credit, because, I thought it was a mistake for Jay not to do the Arnold every year. I said, why doesn't he just win the Arnold every year? Who cares? But he was just concentrating on that Olympia as if he knew he could beat Ronnie. And quite frankly, I didn't think anyone was going to beat Ronnie. I didn't think it would ever happen, I guess Jay figured he had age on his side, over Coleman. People don't remember, Coleman was in his 40s, when he was winning Olympias. So that Jay had youth on his side. He knew eventually he was going to catch him, and he was right.
Well, he caught him once. Just Coleman pulled out ahead again after that. For at least
2 more years. Yeah.
2 years. Then 2005 was a very you could toss that one up.
Yeah.
I mean, 2004 they were comparable as well.
Yeah, true.
They're both freaky massive in 2004.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I saw King Kamali was doing like an Instagram live or something like that, and he was talking about fiber and how he uses Benefiber, which is the worst. It's not even fiber. He goes, "Oh, I like it because it dissolves well." Well,
what is it like? What is the source of high? Was it all insoluble fibers?
It's all soluble, but anything that dissolves in water there's no grit to it. There's no meat to it. It doesn't have any impact on your gut.
It can't scrape nothing.
Doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any effect. So my wife wrote, she was watching his Instagram live, just happened to be watching it. She's like, "Oh, we'll send you a tub of Fiberlize." He's like, "All right." And then I think Dexter was in there too. Dexter's like, "Send me a tub too."
Dexter, my bank account just fell below $6 million.
No, but I definitely send it to him. That's cool, But everyone should really be using it. I mean, like I said, I'm terrible at marketing myself because I don't like to brag about good stuff that I've got because it sounds like
it's too self-serving. I'll brag about it.
No, I know you love it.
Protein powder.
Yeah. No, we have very good quality products at Species Nutrition, and that's just the case. And if you're looking for high quality products, then you buy our stuff. All right, I want to end the show, Chris, on I have a quote because a lot of times people don't have a quote. Yeah, it's not really a quote. It's more like it's an interesting anecdote, and so I'll read it. The expansion of the universe and the evolution of all species is dependent on contrast. How could you ever decide what you do want out of life without living some of what you don't want? And
that's
right.
Go ahead.
I'm going to continue. Yeah. And so, be easy on yourself. Don't hold yourself to the impossible standard of only being in a place where everything is exactly as you want it to be. If you could do that, you would cease to exist.
Yeah.
So we need contrast. We need to know what we don't want out of life to know what we really do want, because that's the universe we live in. We live in a universe of contrast. There's good, there's evil, there's hot, there's cold, and the only reason you like hot is because you don't like cold.
You know what? There's a saying I always say this. I sum that whole thing up, not to belittle that because there's so much depth in that. But I tell my kids, by opposites, things are known.
Right. Yeah.
That's my little... And they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "What would you like to do today?" clean the house or sit around? By opposites. Which one? You know what I mean? Or they had a basketball game the other day, and I started out with how terrible the team did. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of it, you know, you had some good points too.
Well, you learn also, you make mistakes on stage. You know, you do a bodybuilding show and you screw things up, but you learn how to do it the right way because you know that you don't want to do it the wrong way. It's the old Thomas Edison, quote about, he failed, 40,000 times in making a light bulb?
Yeah.
And he said, but I learned all the different ways of not to make a light bulb. You know, it only took one way to learn how to make a light bulb, but I learned 40,000 ways of not to make a light bulb. That's what I discovered. And that's life, you know. You're going to learn sometimes the hard way, you know. You're going to injure yourself. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get sick. And, you know, you find out how not to do things. Now, the advantage of having a coach in bodybuilding is that the coaches hopefully can circumnavigate, can keep you away from the bad stuff and tell you, look, we already made that mistake. You don't need to make every single mistake in bodybuilding. If we can remove 50% of the mistakes you're going to make, you're going to be a lot more successful and a lot sooner. And that's the advantage of having a good coach, you know. But look, it's true. You know, I embrace the contrast in life. I find out a lot of things. I do things wrong all the time, and nowadays, because I have more insight into myself, when I do that, I say to myself, okay, it's not wrong. It's just it was meant to happen, but now I know that's not where I want to be. I want to be over here, you know. And so
the point there, you know, a bigger point there is how do you gain insight into yourself?
Well, you know what? I did a great interview. It hasn't aired yet. It'll air this week with Antoine Vallier, who was a super talented bodybuilding prodigy from Canada. When he was 16, he was awesome. He turned pro, you know, in 2012, and they got into a life of drugs. He was partying too much with stimulants, and he lost everything. He lost his contracts with MD and Animal Pack. He lost all his money. He was almost living on the street, essentially. He was living in a shelter at some point. And now he's making a comeback at the Toronto Pro Show, and he's back, and we went over all the stuff that he learned about himself, and he said it himself. He goes, you know, I had to learn for myself what I didn't want to learn what I did want. And, you know, you have to, he said, nowadays, instead of impulsively making decisions, if I get the urge to use drugs, I stop myself and I look and I realize it's a thought, right? And I imagine this thought floating in the air in my head. And I decide rather than just act, I push the thought away from myself and I don't do it. In the past, he goes, I would just impulsively act on whatever thoughts came into my head. Now I understand that I have to look at the thoughts and analyze them and ask myself, is this going to serve me or is it going to be a disservice to me? Wow. And I thought that was a very mature way to be. And I said, you know, but it took him 3 rehabs to learn that. It didn't happen overnight. So
I was just gonna say, people go through rehab and never figure that out. Period.
No, exactly. So,
but if you have not a spontaneous, but a, you know, you do things on a whim. Yeah. If you're the type of person who just
impulsive. You mean like an impulsive?
Impulsive. If you're an impulsive personality, it's hard to think those things through. So,
well, that's why you have to find out what you don't want to be. A lot of times you have to hit rock bottom to know that I don't want to be in rock bottom. Some people want to be at rock bottom, but other people don't. They say, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going the other direction. Now I know what that life is like. I don't want to be a part of that life. I want to be successful. I want to be, you know, I want to embrace my talents that I know are inside myself. And because a lot of successful people are very self-destructive, you know, sometimes it goes, the extremes go along with that kind of behavior. So to be that introspective as he is now is very mature. He just turned 30, and I'm glad that he's on the rise again. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of damage he can do. He's a very talented bodybuilder. He kind of reminds me a little of a Sergio Oliva Jr. physique. And it'll be interesting to see what he does up on stage. But, you know, once again, you know, don't be pissed off. Don't be upset if you think that, oh, I screwed my whole life up. No, you didn't. You just found out how you don't want to live. Now go and live the way you do want to live. It's never too late to be the person that you could have been. And that's my friend Charlie Arm's saying. He went to jail for 7 years. He was a functional illiterate. He became a jailhouse lawyer. Overturned his own case, and he's been a free man since then. So, once again, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And on those wise notes and on those wise words, We're out of time, Chris. Until next week. Remember, with Heavy Muscle Radio,
the truth hurts.
Good night, everyone.